There's an idea out there that black people hated the space program, saw it as a huge waste of money. It's a popular idea, but it's one that can't be proved, and that might be the opposite of the truth. This idea that black people oppose the space program comes from two main places. One of them is this.
So the rat done bit my sister Nell with Whitey on the moon, and her face and arms began to swell, and Whitey's on the moon. I can't pay no doctor bills, but Whitey's on the moon.
Ask any black baby boomer about the space program. See if they don't mention Whitey on the moon. The other place this idea comes from is this. On July 15th, 1969, the day before Apollo 11 left for the moon, there was a protest at the launch site in Florida. 150 people showed up, part of the Poor People's Campaign, organized by Ralph Abernathy, who took over the Southern Christian Leadership Conference after Dr. King was killed. It's easy to look at these things and say black Americans saw the space program as a waste of money. But is that true? In fact, there's absolutely no way to know. You may have heard the phrase, the plural of anecdote is not data. This may be a case of that. Here's the thing, there is absolutely no public opinion polling on people's attitudes towards the space program that breaks down the respondents by race. So we know how all Americans felt about the space program, but we don't know how black Americans felt about the space program. When it comes to all Americans, we like the space program, we just don't like to pay for it. This poll is from 1965, but the numbers stayed like this for years. And yes, I'm also surprised that slum clearance was a priority. Today we'd call that gentrification. There's only been one time when a majority of Americans said the space program was worth the money. That was during the first moon landing. But even then, it was only 53%. If we want to know how black people felt about the space program, there's another place to educate our guests. That place is the black press. During segregation, the black press was seen as the community's voice. It was where the black middle class preached uplift, showed off fashion and aspiration, and railed against injustices that the white papers pretended didn't exist. It's not a perfect window into the past. It's a middle-class voice. It's only a slice of black popular opinion, but it's the only gauge we have, all these years later, of what black people thought and wanted. At first, the black press thought the space program was awesome. It saw the black people who worked there as bringing a glittering new world, part of a team that would get Americans to the moon first. A lot of people caught space fever when President Kennedy launched the space race, and the black press did too. Like the white press, it did its part to rev up readers and get them excited. On the opinion pages, though, the tone and the content was often quite different. NASA's image was clean, new, and untainted by the problems in the southern communities where it was based. The black press liked to get beyond the image and show some of the rot underneath the facade. And almost as soon as the American space program notched its first successes, the black press began to demand that there be a black astronaut. This was part and parcel of that drive for uplift that I mentioned a second ago. The black press wanted black excellence to be recognized and appreciated, and at the beginning of the space program, there was nothing that said excellence more than the astronauts. A popular thought was a black astronaut would inspire black kids to participate and excel in math, engineering, and science. That's one of the reasons why the black press went out of its mind in 1961 when an Air Force pilot named Ed Dwight got into the program that placed him 2 steps from the astronaut corps. I spoke with Ed Dwight a lot when I was writing my book. We also wrote back and forth. After he was enrolled in the pre-astronaut class, he was taken under the wing of civil rights leader Whitney Young. Young had Dwight give hundreds of speeches. Dwight told me that Whitney Young thought the whole idea of having a black astronaut was not an effort to get me into space, but was an effort solely to inspire black kids to get educated. It really worked. NASA had a program called Space Mobile, a traveling educational vehicle aimed at black school kids. A highlight of Space Mobile was a film strip that told kids, if you study hard, there's a place for you in the world of space exploration.
But the future will see many boys and girls like you, growing up to design better spaceships, creating better cities, and making many things better than they are today. How will this come about? Education is the answer.
In the film, the kids meet Ed Dwight at Edwards Air Force Base.
Keith is so impressed by his visit to the air base that he asked Captain Dwight, how does one become an astronaut? This was his answer.
Well, Keith, it's like I tell my own kids. One must study hard in order to get anywhere in life.
Along with Dwight, the kids visit some NASA contractors where, like the black press had been telling their parents, they learn that African Americans work in the space program. Roscoe Monroe, who ran the Space Mobile program, said you could watch the reactions when black kids heard Ed Dwight's message. He said it did a lot of good. But after Dwight was not selected to be an astronaut...
Are you now, in fact, completely out of the astronaut program? Is there a possibility of you ever being back in?
I don't know.
Whitney Young turned against the space program. In the 1960s, newspaper columnists were like influencers are today, and Whitney Young had a huge and important newspaper column. The civil rights struggle had shifted a lot by 1969. Younger people had come into the movement, and they wanted a different approach.
We will use that violence to rid ourselves of oppression if necessary.
More of the black press had moved against the Apollo 11 launch by that time, too, and so Whitney Young jumped on the train. A few days after Apollo 11 splashed down in the Pacific, he took up Ralph Abernathy's critique.
For any nation that will spend billions of dollars to put a man on the moon and will not spend $60 to stand one on his feet right down here on Earth.
A few months later, Gil Scott-Heron put it a lot more succinctly.
Taxes taking my whole damn check. The junkies make me a nervous wreck. The price of food is going up. And as if all that crap wasn't enough, a rat done bit my sister Nell. With Whitey on the moon, her face and arms began to swell, and Whitey's on the moon. Was all that money I made last year for Whitey on the moon? How come I ain't got no money here? Whitey's on the moon.
If any or all of this is news to you, I have a book I want to suggest. It's the one behind me, We Could Not Fail, which I wrote along with Stephen Moss. There's a paperback version, and you can also get it in an audiobook form from Audible.